0344 499 1000. We'll have a chat in a moment. But first, the banks are pumping 100 billion into the economy to aid the recovery, which is pretty good news, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's going to be great. Jonathan Davis, economist and presenter of Booms and Bust podcast, joins us now. Jonathan, good evening.
Hello, sir.
How are you?
I'm okay. I'm just off my exercise bike, 8.5 miles over the last half an hour, listening to you.
What, every day you do that? I couldn't do
A
that.
few times a week.
Cool.
It's a very small circuit in my bedroom.
It's quite a long way.
Why don't you get out and run along the road?
No, dangerous.
Oh, running. No, I can't stand running.
Yeah, I agree with you there.
I don't mind cycling. I can't stand it.
Whereabouts do you live, Jonathan?
Hertfordshire. Just up
Oh,
the
well,
road
you
from
could
me.
cycle around the roads up there, couldn't you?
I could, and I suspect over the summer I will, yeah.
Well, be careful.
I'm feeling
Thank you,
tired now, him just saying that. I've had a very tiring day lying in the sun again all day.
Yeah, it gets to you, doesn't it?
It does, doesn't it? It makes it very difficult. Now, Jonathan, before we talk about this 100 billion or whatever, I've got a question that I never seem to get the answer, and I don't understand why. So,
42.
Yeah, that is the answer to everything.
It might be, but not in this case, Jonathan. No, you're a bit like him, aren't you? A pair of you get on really well together, wouldn't you? Right, here, because I'm not very bright, so I'll try and sort this out in my head. Look, so this economic crash really has actually affected the whole world, hasn't it?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Is that the question?
No, just
Yeah,
so
that's
I
an
know.
answer. Yeah.
He is like you, isn't he?
Yeah.
So why can't each country involved just write off the debt and print some more money? Why can't we do that?
Well, if you do that, you are, the technical term is you're defaulting on the debt, and much of the debt is held. We have borrowed from hedge funds, other countries, pension funds, your listeners' pension funds. If you default
Well, I'm not
on
suggesting.
debt,
No, hang on. I'm not suggesting we don't pay them back.
That's what it sounded like.
No, it didn't. I'm suggesting we pay the money we owe them.
By
Just
printing
print the
more,
money,
just printing more.
printing money, pay, and then start afresh.
Right.
Why can't we do that?
well, actually, James, in effect, that's what government borrowing is and has been for hundreds of years. Our government, whichever colour it happens to be at any time, borrows money to help pay for the things that they've said they're going to spend, as well as the tax money comes in. So that's where governments get money, from borrowing and from taxes. The problem is, for the last 100 years, our illustrious salespeople, have always overpromised. So they've always had to borrow more and more. And when a debt becomes due, say 10 years later, they just borrow A, to pay that debt back, and B, to borrow some more, to spend some more. Eventually, when you borrow too much, because you've spent too much, you've created too much currency, well, what you do is, again, use a technical word, you debase the currency. The currency plummets. No one outside of our country, no investor wants to own the pound sterling, so the pound goes down. We're an importing nation, so everything that we import goes sky high in price. It's called inflation, and that annihilates your economy. And ultimately, actually, I don't know if we'll talk about this, but that is how I expect this to pan out over the next decade or two.
And is this 100 billion going to be printed by the government?
It's going to be computer generated.
Yeah, quantitative
by the Bank of
easing.
England.
So it's just created out of nothing,
Yeah, but
which
hang on,
devalues our money in the bank, doesn't it?
Well, if we all do this around the world and say we've had to, we needed more money because I don't understand why we can't do that without not paying anyone, pay everybody.
Makes our money worthless, doesn't it? Because
Well-
there's more of it.
Well, if everybody did it, how does it make it worthless?
Worth less.
Well,
You start
it's a
from
very
the same place.
interesting. It's a very interesting question, but of course, it's totally 100% unfeasible because not everyone will join in. Everyone's got different levels of debt levels. You're all. It's like OPEC, the oil crowd. Pretty quickly, some of them who agree to a cutback in their production, they gently, quietly start increasing their production again. In other words, it would never happen, it would never work in practice. It's a utopian ideal which could never happen given human and political nature.
Are there any caveats, though, on this 100 billion? Because the last time we bailed out the banks and, gave them money for quantitative easing was to stimulate the economy, and they used it for themselves, didn't they? And they sort of went back and it messed up the whole economy, really. It didn't do with the money what they were meant to.
Well, just like it's now an astonishing a total of £745 billion since March. So don't talk about 100, talk about £750 billion. It's getting on for the same amount of quantitative easing, actually, that the Bank of England has done in the last decade. We've done in the last 2.5 months, literally.
Oh my God.
Yes. They're telling us that it's to stimulate the economy. And they told us in 2009 and 2012 and 2016 and so on, it's to stimulate the economy. Nothing could be further from reality or indeed the truth. Talk about being playing economically with the truth. What they're doing is supporting financial markets. They're supporting market participants, hedge funds, investors, the city, Wall Street, Frankfurt. Only about 5 or 10% of all this printing that's been going on has actually been going into the economy. And that's the furlough schemes and all the self-employed and etc. schemes. The bulk of it is going into financial markets. It's the biggest con since they did the 1990 World Series, the 1919 World Series in the Great Gatsby.
So why don't we just print the money, pay these people off, and start again? We'll still be getting money in from taxes, but we won't have to put the taxes up so much, and we can actually rescue the economy because we don't have to really go right down the pan, do we?
Well, I believe I did explain the more you just create money out of thin air, as your man there said, it devalues what you've got.
I don't understand that, because say if we are a country,
let me explain.
Why can't we, or a world? Why can't we just write all these?
Let me explain. I'm holding a pen in my hand, as it happens. I think it cost me £1. One of your British sterling pounds. If you suddenly double the amount of pounds in the system, then I can tell you that pretty well, almost automatically, not necessarily immediately, but ultimately and pretty well guaranteed, my pen would then cost £2. And
Why?
Eventually, when the cost of living and the cost of doing business, the cost of buying food, the cost of heating your home and your factory, when they rise and rise and rise, you become uncompetitive in the world market. We're a global trading nation.
I don't know. Why do they have to? Why do we, just paying off the debts we have to all these people who lend us all money, all that? I mean, if they're real and whatever, nobody sees any money anymore, do they? It's all just bits of paper transferred from one bank to another.
Let me explain how the debt system works. Let's talk about Her Majesty's Treasury, the Chancellor. When the Chancellor needs money, say on a Wednesday at 12 noon, he says to the Bank of England, I need £1 billion. Go to the market and see what is the lowest interest rate we can borrow £1 billion for over 10 years, for example. And they literally go in a reverse auction, and whether it's an insurance company, a pension fund, or another country, a sovereign wealth fund, a hedge fund, and so on, they will say, I'll give you it for 3%, I'll give you it for 2.8%. The guy who gives it for the lowest interest rate, he gets the deal. So he gets to lend £1 billion for, say, 2.5% per annum for the next 10 years, and then in 10 years' time, the £1 billion needs to get paid off. The problem is, the more money that you create, I can pretty well almost guarantee to you it will create inflation. So 6 months down the line, when you go to that reverse auction again, Chancellor says, I need another £1 billion. The interest rate will not be 2.5%. It'll be, say, 3.5%. And that creates a vicious spiral up in both interest rates and inflation, and our currency goes down the pan, and it's stagflation, which I believe, as I say, we're moving towards. Stagnation economically and inflation, I'm afraid to say, it's the worst of all worlds.
It's like a stealth tax, isn't it? And what will happen is, the rich got richer, the gap between the very rich and just regular people like us became massive after 2008, and this will happen again, and it will increase again.
Why should it happen again? Why can't we stop it? Why can't we stop it? If I'm the Prime Minister, why can't I just say, right, well, print some money to put into paying these off so I don't have to raise the taxes? And so people.
But what happens in the end? People snap, don't they? And you get the people with the pitchforks, and you get the revolution, don't you? That's what happens in the end, like the French Revolution.
What's been happening all over the country and in America in the last couple of weeks?
Yeah.
Out in the streets.
Yeah.
But that wasn't about
people have not got jobs. People have already not got jobs. 612,000 jobs have gone already in 2 months. The size of the economy is absolutely plummeted, an astonishing 25%. Now, no question, post-lockdown, and we're starting to come out of it, of course, there will be an upsurge in the economy, but my estimation is when we see the outturn at the end of the year, the size of our economy will be 10% smaller than last year. And because of the coming inflation, I'm not talking about 100% per annum inflation. I'm just saying rising inflation, it's coming, and it's coming for years. With stagflation, the economy will hardly grow at all, and in fact, I'm looking at 1.5 to 3 million extra unemployed. I'm not making these out of thin air. I've been
and
saying
this will go for a long time as well.
Hang on, you are the most depressing person I've spoken to for ages, Jonathan. I mean, you
don't shoot the messenger.
I'm the most honest person you've heard.
Well, why don't we take a different line then? What would be better for us to do?
Well, I believe, and there are many folk who believe, unfortunately we have zero power, we have zero influence. Many of us believe that we should stop funding the city. We should stop doing what we've always done, because all we're doing is we're adding more and more debt onto a hugely indebted society and Bank of England. And we should actually take short, sharp shock treatment. It will create immediate deflation, but, we're going to have high unemployment anyway, so there's no difference there. And with lower costs of doing business, businesses can get going and get moving, the ones that are strong, whereas what we're doing is we're keeping the zombie banks and the zombie businesses in business. The gardeners would say to you, pull the weeds and support.
But they're powerful, the banks, aren't they? They've got, they're with the politicians, aren't they?
I have to take a break now. The two of you can go and depress yourselves in the corner over there. Jonathan, thank you very much indeed. You should go and live with Jonathan. You make a
we need to live somewhere. We lose our property.
And we'll take a break.
Online, on DAB, and on the Talk Radio.